Hi, I'm Patrick Bryant, your city manager. The following presentation continues a discussion that began in November 2022 regarding the city sanitation program. The Board of Mayor and Commissioners heard from employees of the City Sanitation Division speak about their experience with the current sanitation program, and we had other sessions in 2023 where we discussed the impact of the sanitation program on the city's financial resources. This presentation will discuss three potential scenarios for the sanitation program moving forward, and we can't wait to hear your feedback on each scenario. In 2022, we had 420 days of unplanned sick leave taken in the Public Works Department. We came to attribute many of these absences to physical injury and mental exhaustion from the practice of twice-weekly backdoor sanitation service. As we dug further into the issue, we heard stories from our sanitation staff that included attacks by unleashed pets, exposure to vermin and roaches from unbagged waste, chronic pain developed from lifting and walking, and antagonistic and potentially demeaning interactions with residents. 420 days of unplanned sick leave is equivalent to 3,360 man-hours. One full-time equivalent, or FTE employee, equals 2,080 man-hours or 260 8-hour workdays, which is the amount of work expected from an hourly employee on an annual basis in peak conditions. As we discussed in a previous work session, unplanned sick leave led to a loss of 1.6 full-time equivalent positions from peak conditions. Peak conditions assumes that nobody takes any unplanned sick leave, the weather is perfect, and all vehicles are in working order. The city also lost 2.4 full-time equivalent positions due to inclement weather and vehicle and equipment failure. The next slides will illustrate that vehicle and equipment failure is increasing on a regular basis due to the age of the fleet that we currently have in the sanitation division. So what does that mean? It means that the Public Works Department essentially needs 4 additional full-time equivalent positions in order to perform the work that is required of both the sanitation and green space divisions in the manner that the BOMC, our residents, businesses, and staff have come to expect. Within our Public Works program, we can forego green space activities, but we cannot forego picking up solid waste for many reasons, primarily health and safety. When the sanitation division has unplanned sick leave, we must transition staff from the green space division over to the sanitation division to ensure that the daily sanitation duties are performed. This results in green space activities becoming impaired. If the green space activities that we perform are constantly impaired by the transition of green space division employees over to the sanitation division, then we can't catch up unless we perform those activities after normal business hours. Our ability to perform both sanitation and green space activities is also impacted by an aging vehicle fleet and aging equipment. Most of the vehicle fleet within the sanitation division has aged well past its useful lifespan of 7 years. The newest of the 3 garbage trucks that we employ is already 7 years old, meaning it too needs replacing. The oldest leaf vacuum truck we use is almost 25 years old. We recently got it back from the diesel mechanic after 8 consecutive months of service. Because that truck was out of service, we were unable to deploy the full fleet of leaf vacuum trucks during this past leaf season. We used our newest leaf truck, which is almost 20 years old, to perform all of the work. In order to catch up on leaf collection, the Public Works Department had to use hundreds of hours of overtime at the end of the year, costing the city additional resources that would otherwise not have been spent if the manpower and equipment were sufficient to perform those activities during normal business hours. Vehicle repairs and maintenance for sanitation vehicles and equipment were more than $96,000 in 2022. To put that in further perspective, we budgeted $50,000 for those repairs within the sanitation fund. Due to the age of the fleet, those costs will continue to rise because many of those vehicles, like the leaf vacuum vehicles and the 2 garbage trucks, are old and well past their useful life. In a recent meeting of the DeKalb County Commission, the commissioners discussed a potential increase in the county's tipping fees. A tipping fee is a fee assessed to municipalities that dump solid waste into the county's landfill. Currently, those tipping fees for the city of Avondale Estates are $33 per ton. The proposed increase of those fees by the county would constitute an additional $62 per ton, from $33 to $95 per ton. This will result in an increase in our sanitation fee of approximately $115 per household per year. The sanitation fee is already insufficient to cover the staffing needed to perform all of the baseline departmental tasks. Again, we are 4 full-time equivalent positions short. The current sanitation fee is also insufficient to replace the city's aging vehicle fleet. After reviewing all of that information, we've developed 3 different possible scenarios for the sanitation program moving forward. Scenario 1 keeps all of our current services the same. That means we retain twice weekly backdoor collection of residential solid waste, once weekly curbside recycling, leaf pickup, yard pickup, all of the green space services that we currently perform, and our commercial solid waste hauling program. There would be no changes to the program as we currently provide it. To do that most effectively, we have assessed the number of vehicles that we would need to replace and their projected costs, personnel changes that would be needed and the cost of those, and the impact that the changes would have on the sanitation fee and our general fund. Scenario 1 would use a phased approach to replace the worn-out garbage truck fleet. To continue current services, we would need to replace 2 of the 3 garbage trucks. The newest garbage truck in the fleet, which again is already 7 years old, would become our 3rd backup vehicle. The city would also need to replace its F550 dump truck that we use for bulk yard waste collection and special pickups, as it is almost as old as the leaf trucks. In total, the city would need to purchase 2 20-yard garbage trucks, 1 F550 dump truck for bulk and yard collection, 2 leaf trucks, and 2 leaf vacuums. The replacement cost for these vehicles and equipment would be approximately $920,000 of capital expenditures within the sanitation fund over a 5-year period, or $184,000 on an annual basis. We currently budget $85,000 annually in the sanitation fund for capital expenditures, so an additional $99,000 a year will be needed for these new capital expenditures. We will also need to create 4 new FTE positions that would float between sanitation and green space divisions so that we can cover the deficit in FTE throughout the department. The compensation for those positions would be split between the sanitation and general funds. Each fund would be responsible for an approximately $87,000 increase in new employment compensation. So, to cover the cost to maintain current service levels, the sanitation fee would need to increase from $596 a year per household to $714 a year per household. The city's millage rate would also need to be increased by approximately 0.25 mils to cover the additional FTE needed for green space activities. For reference, a 0.25 mil increase in property taxes roughly equates to $11 for every $100,000 of assessed value in a home. When the county moves forward with its tipping fee increase, that sanitation fee will need to increase by an additional $115 a year, from $714 a year per household to $829 a year per household. I want to stress that these totals are not exact and are rough estimates. In scenario 2, the city would assume a switch to once-a-week curbside solid waste collection and maintain once-a-week recycling collection. To perform this service, the city would need to purchase 96-gallon trash cans for each household, similar to what DeKalb County uses. To ensure that both the Sanitation Division and Green Space Division are appropriately staffed and equipped to perform the activities they need to perform, the city would still need to do the same phased replacement of vehicles and equipment to replace our worn-out fleet. The city still needs to purchase 2 20-yard garbage trucks, an F550 dump truck, 2 leaf trucks, 2 leaf vacuums, and the additional 96-gallon trash cans. The total capital expenditure for this scenario is approximately $219,000 per year over 5 years instead of the $184,000 annually projected in scenario 1. From a personnel standpoint, the city would need 6 sanitation crew members to become 60-40 floaters, meaning that these persons would spend 2 days a week performing green space activities and 3 days a week performing sanitation activities. In this scenario, the city will have to raise its millage rate by approximately 0.5 mils to cover the cost of the additional employees needed for the green space division. For reference, a 0.5 mil increase roughly equals $22 per $100,000 of assessed value per home. To reiterate, scenario 2 would switch from twice weekly backdoor solid waste collection to once weekly curbside solid waste collection. The recycling program would stay the same. Employees who are now no longer spending 100% of their time with solid waste collection can now spend some of their time doing green space activities. Some of the burden of the compensation for those employees would shift from the sanitation fund to the general fund. Scenario 3 assumes outsourcing solid waste collection completely. Outsourcing would eliminate the burden of having to replace the vehicles and equipment associated with solid waste collection and allow us to sell those vehicles and equipment. I want to mention that the money received from the vehicle and equipment sale is not factored into this scenario since we do not know what type of resources we will gain from the sale of the vehicles and equipment. Yard waste and yard collection would remain the purview of the city. Therefore, the city would still need to purchase one new F-550 dump truck and 2 new leaf trucks and 2 leaf vacuums. That would equate to approximately a $108,000 annual capital expenditure, which would be an additional $23,000 annually from what we currently budget within the sanitation fund. It would also cost the city approximately $16 per household per month to contract for solid waste and recycling services. That contract would roughly equal $303,000 as a new cost to the city. Additionally, the city would need to retain 1 managerial and 4 non-managerial staff positions within the sanitation division, which equal approximately $260,000. Altogether, that results in a total estimated sanitation fee per year at $425 per household. In addition, the green space division would add 2 positions at a cost of $87,000. This solution will also require the city to release an RFP so that potential contractors could provide estimates on the cost of contracting out the program. This next slide shows all 3 scenarios side by side for comparison. In scenario 1, the sanitation fee will be $714 per year per household and necessitate a property tax increase of approximately 0.25 mils. In this option, we would be able to replace the vehicles and equipment we need and hire 4 new non-managerial workers who would float between the sanitation division and the green space division. When the county increases its tipping fees, that sanitation fee would need to increase from $714 a year to $829 a year per household. In scenario 2, the city would switch to 1 time a week curbside solid waste collection from twice weekly backdoor sanitation collection. The city would still need to replace vehicles and equipment and purchase 96-gallon cans for each household. The sanitation fee would increase to $680 per year per household, and the city's millage rate would need to increase 0.5 mils to account for the compensation necessary to fund additional green space employees. When the tipping fees increase, this sanitation fee would increase to $795 per year per household. Lastly, Scenario 3 gives the city the option to outsource its solid waste collection program. In this scenario, all sanitation staff would either be retained by the city to perform yard waste and leaf collection, or hired by the sanitation contractor to perform solid waste and recycling collection. The city would be able to sell all unnecessary vehicles and equipment associated with the collection of solid waste and be able to have a fully staffed green space division. The sanitation fee for this scenario would be approximately $425 per year per household, and the millage rate would need to increase by approximately 0.25 mils to account for the increased staffing to the green space division. I hope the information I provided to you today was helpful. If you have any questions about this material, please feel free to email me or any member of the BOMC. We are going to continue having these discussions in the coming months, and we really look forward to your feedback. On this slide, you can find additional resources. We have provided you with links to the audio feed of the previous BOMC meetings that we discussed this topic. Feel free to listen at your convenience.